Chapter 31. Tuesday late afternoon. Doreen walked back to her computer and studied as many different angles on these cases as she could, but everything she did drew a blank. She needed Jude to either break or do something stupid like attack her, so they had a reason to go into his house, particularly Ed's home office, to search the desk for that later will. Which would be perfect, she said out loud. Or she needed to find a way to get in there without anybody knowing. She hemmed and hawed over the possibilities, but no matter what she thought of, it would put her in the wrong light. And that she didn't want to do. She walked out front and sat on the porch steps, and it didn't take long for the Porsche to come around again. As soon as it came up to her driveway, it stopped. She watched as he got out, apparently not seeing her. She crouched down on the front step, so she peered around the bushes through the railing. She sent Mac a text. "He's here again." And indeed, he snuck up around the back of her driveway. As soon as he was out of sight, she snuck back into the house and raced to the kitchen door, which was propped open for the animals sprawled out in the backyard, enjoying the warm evening air. As she watched, he came around the side, crept up to the door and into the house. She was hiding in her kitchen area by her printer, and she started videotaping his entrance into her home. He swept through the kitchen and all of downstairs, and then she heard him go upstairs. She wondered what he was looking for, then she knew. He was after the papers she had taken from his recycling bin. She frowned and saw them under her laptop. Did she dare move them? She grabbed them and shoved them into her scanner. As it started working, Jude came back down the stairs and confronted her. She cried out in false alarm. "What are you doing in my house?" This guy had a lot of nerve. "You stupid bitch," he said, "you don't know what you're dealing with." "What are you talking about?" she said, advancing on him. "How dare you come into my house?" "I'll go wherever the hell I want," he said. "You stole from me." That stopped her in her tracks. "What are you talking about? I didn't steal anything." Muggs, hearing her raised voice, was suddenly in the doorway. And darn if Thaddeus wasn't riding on his back. Of Goliath there was no sign. And that made her even more suspicious. Jude paused for a moment. "You stole from my recycling bin." She laughed. "Seriously?" "I accidentally threw something away," he said, "and you're the only one who would have found and taken it." "What was it?" she asked. Just then, he looked behind her to see the last page on the scanner. He snatched the papers from the machine and held them up. "These," he said. "I'll have my lawyer after you for this." "You could," she said, "but I'm pretty sure the lawyer will be covering his own butt. Besides, I didn't steal those. Anything you throw into the garbage and into your trash bins off your property is for anybody to collect. It's not theft. You threw it away. I have full rights to take it." Jude stopped. She gave a crisp, clean nod. "You should learn the law before you start accusing people of breaking it. If you hadn't hired that jerk to kill your father and your girlfriend and your previous lawyer, you wouldn't be facing 3 murder charges." He stared at her, his jaw working. "Oh yeah, I know," she said. "I also know there's another will. But I won't tell you where it is." She smiled sweetly. "So, I highly suggest you come up with a decent story to get yourself off the hook on that one. You interfering no good, which?" He stepped toward her. But Muggs jumped behind him, barking ferociously, momentarily diverting his attention. Doreen sidestepped him and ran outside into the backyard. She still had her camera on and was recording. As he charged toward her, she said, "I'm taping this. Go ahead and hit me. We'll add assault and battery to your charges." "I didn't touch you," he said, stopping in his tracks. Surprisingly, Doreen's grouchy neighbor Richard popped up over the top of the fence. "Doreen, are you okay?" "No," she said. "Jude Burns has threatened me, entered my home without my permission, and has now taken something of mine from my house. Jude stared at her in astonishment. These papers are mine. Which you threw away, she said. Now you've come into my house illegally, and you've taken them away from me. She turned to Richard and said, "Call Mac." As quickly as he arrived, Richard's head disappeared around the corner. I thought nobody liked you. Why would your neighbor help you? Because I helped him, she said. But what do you know about helping people? You are just a taker. He glared at her. I'm not going to jail, he said. There is no way. Of course not, she said. You didn't actually kill them, did you? I mean, it was your killer for hire who you paid to do it. I wonder where you got the 10 grand to pay for each of their murders though. That's a lot of money. Of course, maybe your girlfriend kept that loose change around, and you took advantage by searching her place while she lay dying. Jude's face worked and Doreen nodded. Yeah, you think I don't know how this works, she said. I wonder if you have something to do with that ice pick though. I don't have a clue what you're talking about. This is all so long ago. Why are you dredging any of it up? I know it was a long time ago, she said, but some things never change. Your sisters are living terrible lives. Why do they deserve anything better? He asked. They're no different from me. Why should they get all the money and I get nothing? Why didn't you share with them? She asked. Why should I? He left the money to me, Jude said and tapped his chest. My dad left the money to me. Did he though? She said with a snarky smile. Funny how your father's lawyer died around the same time. The police are opening an investigation into your will, she lied. She hoped Mac would, but it was premature at this point. Jude paled at that. You think I didn't know about that? I've got all the lawyer's notes and I turned it all over to the police. When she said that, something came over him. It was almost like a coldness, a chill. Then I have nothing to lose. He advanced on her. She realized she was in imminent danger now and took several hurried steps backward. What will you do? Well, according to you, I've already killed 3 people, he said, so what difference does a 4th make? His words echoed Mac's earlier words. I guess the question is whether you killed anybody else too. Somebody killed by an ice pick. He stared at her, puzzled. What are you talking about? I'm missing an ice pick, she announced. I'm expecting to find out it was used to kill somebody. Just who are you? He asked, puzzled. Doreen, she said with a wave of her hand. Somebody with a hobby of solving cold cases. My life was never a case. Get your nose out of my business. He glared at her. Why do you care? Because it's wrong. And if I get a chance to cheer on the underdog and right some wrongs, I will do so. If you had anything to do with your father's death, your girlfriend's death, or your father's lawyer's death, then you need to pay for it. And stealing all that money from your sisters is just nasty. He shook his head. What does any of that have to do with an ice pick? I'm missing one, she said. She looked at him hopefully. It was a set your father had on display. He stared at her, then scratched the back of his head. Good Lord, she said, you know what happened to it. He looked at her and groaned. I do know what happened to the ice pick, but it didn't murder anybody. I'm glad to hear that, she said, because the maker would like it back. I gave the set to the maker's brother. Fred. You gave the set to Fred? Why would you do that? He wanted them badly, so I gave the set to him. Something about my father having ruined his brother's reputation, or some such thing. I don't know anything more about that. You don't look like the giving type. Frustrated, he snapped, because he saw something and the set was payment for his silence. What did he see? Jude frowned. It doesn't matter. She nodded. What were you doing that Fred saw? None of your business, he said. I'll call my lawyer about this. He pulled out his phone. Go ahead, she said. Contact the one cheesy illegal lawyer you've got. I'm sure that'll make for great courtroom drama. She stopped and said, It wasn't Frank you gave it to. It was Fred. I know that. I just said I gave it to the maker's brother. Don't you listen? He asked, dialing his phone again and then stopping, hesitating as if not sure what to do. You gave them back to Fred because Fred did the landscaping for Ed Burns, she said. I'm slow, but I do finally get there. He saw you kill your father. I didn't kill my father. He tried for outrage but failed miserably. Fred saw something, she said, letting a smirk show. Anything to rattle Jude more. Something ugly. Although I'm surprised that's all he wanted because they don't have much. Maybe, Jude said. But that's all I'll say on the matter. No, it's not. The only reason you'd buckle to that type of pressure is if Fred saw something really good. Although maybe Fred was too scared to ask for more. What did he see? He saw you kill your father? She was fishing and taking a chance on pissing off yet another potential killer, but something had to get him to talk. At least he seemed to have forgotten that she was recording this conversation. A pale, sickly look washed over his face. Aha. I was right. Why, you weaselly, greedy, lazy. Words failed her then. Why couldn't you have found another way? You didn't have to kill him. I'm not talking to you anymore. If you want information, I want a deal. He stiffened his back and stuck his nose in the air. Like she hadn't seen the best of the snobs do that. He couldn't even begin to pull off that maneuver. I can't give you a deal, and I doubt even the cops will give it to you. Why should they? You're just another no-good greedy killer who couldn't be bothered to get a real job. She gave him a big fat smile. That's okay. I think prison will give you a job, so you can finally work for a living. I'll give you the other killer, he cried out desperately. Then I can walk free. You just admitted to killing all these people. She shook her head. Why would you go free? I didn't admit to anything. I had nothing to do with any of this, but I know someone who's way worse than I am, he blustered. Why the hell couldn't you just go away and leave me alone? Why couldn't you have looked after your sisters? She countered, hating that it was all about money. Is money what this is all about? He asked, relaxing, as if seeing a way out of his corner. Fine, I'll give them some money. You realize they're both working as nannies. Unpaid but for their room and board. They can't even have a cell phone of their own, and they get only $50 for gas. That's it. He stared at her. Is that even legal? He asked in amusement. I knew they were losers, but to end up there. He just shook his head, pissing her off more. All you had to do was treat them like people, and they would have been happy. You even have that spare house on the property. They used to live there, he admitted. Why did you kick them out? I was afraid they'd figure it out, he snapped. If they are anything like me, they'd have stuck their nose into my business and found out what I was up to. I couldn't have that. I risked too much for this. And you'd throw another killer under the bus to keep it? Absolutely. Deal? He asked, looking at her hopefully. It's about Fred and Frank. They are the killers. Bingo, she whispered under her breath.